Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's lesson. I briefly want to give you a short summary of Lydende Vorm. Now, it's a topic that many students struggle with, but I hope that this brief overview will help you. I won't be going into too many details or using very complicated examples, but I'll try my best to give you examples that can help you understand what Lydende Vorm is. So as you have been taught in class, Lydende Vorm is passive voice. And Lydende Vorm is the opposite of bedrijvende vorm, which is active voice. And with active voice, you know that we start with the subject. And I've given you an example here with a sentence that reads, I eat food. So we have the subject there highlighted in yellow and in red text. I eat food. Subject, verb, object. Now in passive voice, as you learn in English, we start with the object. And using the same example, the food is being eaten by me. So with active voice, we start with the subject, and passive voice, we start with the object. So now I'm giving you the same sentence here in Afrikaans, applying the same rule, which is Ek eet kos, I eat food, will change to kos word deur my geëet. Now just imagine that there is a deelteken on top of the second E. I couldn't find it on my laptop keyboard. But just imagine that there is one there. So course is the object that we're starting the sentence with, and then you complete the rest of the sentence. So active voice, we start with subject. Passive voice, we start with the objects. So now what's very important to understand, and I think this is where things get a bit tricky, is the tenses. You must understand that when you're changing from active voice to passive voice, from bedrijvende to Lydende Vorm, the tense must be kept the same. What do I mean by that? I mean, if they give you a sentence in active voice and they tell you to change it to passive voice, and the sentence that they've given to you in active voice is in present tense, don't now go and change the tense to past tense when you're giving your answer. I think that's where the complication may come in. People confuse the DEA rules with the Lydende Vorm rules. It's important to understand your DEA rule for Lydende Vorm so that you know which tense you are working in. So I'm going to emphasize again, when you're changing from active voice to passive voice or the other way around, you must keep the tense the same, consistent tense, okay? So I've given you an example here in English with the same sentence. I kick the ball. This is a present tense sentence. If you now change it to present tense in passive voice, it will be the ball is being kicked by me. So here I need to point out that I didn't change the tense of the sentence. I kept the tense the same. I kick the ball, changed to the ball is being kicked by me. This sentence in passive voice is still in present tense. Very important that you remember that. And then I do the same with the past tense sentence. I kicked the ball. This is past tense. Will change to the ball was kicked by me. Very important for you to remember that you keep the tense the same. Same goes for future tense. I will kick the ball. Future tense will change to the ball will be kicked by me. So with each of these tenses, I didn't go and change this past tense sentence, for instance, in passive voice or to passive voice rather, and then put it in present tense. No, I kept the tense the same. So it's very important you keep the tense the same when you are changing from active to passive voice. Same tense. Don't change the tense. So here are your rules for Afrikaans bedrijvende to Lydende Vorm. With past tense, which is verlede tyd, you're going to use the is, deur, ge plus verb rule. Now, I just want to point out here, remember I said this video is going to be very brief, but you must remember your past tense rules for verbs. The verbs that are excluded, the ones starting with ont, miss, ber. Remember those ones. Go and revise those ones. Okay. So past tense, we use the is, dir, ge plus verb rule. So now let's apply that to a sentence. I'm using the same sentences that I used in English, now in Afrikaans. Die seun het die bal geskop. This is the most commonly used example when explaining Lydende Vorm. Die seun is your subject. Het die bal geskop. This indicates to us that we are in verlede tyd because of the het and geskop. Now, if you apply this is die rule, it's going to change to die bal is deur die seun geskop. You didn't need to add another ge because the sentence is already in past tense. It already has a ge in front of the skop kick. So, die bal is deur die seun geskop. Die bal is deur die seun geskop. This is in the same tense. Die seun het die bal geskop. Die seun is deur die seun geskop. So it's still in the same tense. Very important to remember that. Then present tense, teenwoordige tyd. Die seun skop die bal. The boy kicks the ball. The rule for present tense, Lydende Vorm, is word deur ge plus verb. So, how does it change? Die bal word deur die seun geskop. Die bal word deur die seun geskop. Same tense. Now with future tense, toekomende tyd, here's an example. Die seun sal die bal skop. We know that it is future tense because of the sal. So what is the rule for future tense, Lydende Vorm? To be able to change it, you use the sal deur plus verb, and then here you end the sentence with word. That is something you're going to have to remember. Sal deur plus verb word. So it will change to die bal sal deur die seun geskop word. Now I just want to go back a second and point out something about the pronouns, voornaamwoorde. It's very important for you to go through, remember I said this is a brief video, go back and revise your pronoun changes. So what pronouns change in Lydende Vorm? Here, for example, ek changed to may. You will need to go back and revise those pronoun change rules so that your sentence makes grammatical sense. Go and revise those. So let's go through these rules again. Past tense, verlede tyd. We use the is, deur, ge plus verb rule. Present tense, teenwoordige tyd. We use the word deur, ge plus verb rule. Future tense, toekomende tyd. We use the sal deur, ge plus verb and word rule. Once you learn these rules, you have conquered the battle. Okay, and you must learn which rule applies to what, because there's no use knowing these three if you don't know which tense it applies to. So is deur is for past, word deur is for present, sal deur is for future. Learn those rules, learn your voornaamwoorde rules, and you will be okay. So what are some steps that you can use to answer questions? So suppose you're given a question, whether it's in IB or CAPS. The first step is to identify the tense. Why? Because this will help you remember immediately if you've learned your rules, which rule to apply. So you get a sentence and then you see the sentence is in past tense, then you know, oh, okay, this is a verlede tyd sentence. I must apply the is deur rule. Okay. Once you've done that, so you've identified the tense and the rule that's applicable to that tense, you move to step 2, which is identifying your subject and your object. Remember Stompie. Okay, why am I saying remember Stompie? Stompie applies to everything. Very important for you to remember that. So you identify your subject and your object. Then you move to the next step, which is starting the sentence with the object. You start your sentence with the object and you complete the rest of the sentence accordingly. Why do I say that? Because you've already identified the tense. That means you know the rule. Once you've identified the tense and the correct rule, then you identified your subject and your object. And once you start with your object and you complete the sentence with the correct rule, you have done the sentence. So here's an example, very simple example. Remember, I'm using very simple sentences. Die man maak kos. The man makes food. If you identify the tense, you know it's present. Word, deur, rule must be used here. Once you've identified, oh, it's present tense, I know that the present tense rule is word, deur, it becomes simpler. Then you identify your subject and your object. In the sentence, our subject is die man and the object is kos. So we've identified the tense, which means we've now identified the rule. Now we've identified the subject and then we identify the object. Then we can move to doing the sentence. So how does it change? Kos word deur die man gemaak. Okay, so let me revise these steps again. Step 1, identify the tense. And if you've learned your rules properly, you will know once you've identified the tense, which rule must be applied for that tense. So identify the tense, identify the rule. Those two must happen at the same time. Then you identify the subject and the object. Then you start with your object and complete the sentence because you now know the rule. Example again, die man maak kos, the man makes food. We identified the tense as present, so the word deur rule must be applicable. Then the subject is die man, the object is kos. So then we start with the object as indicated here and we complete the rest of the sentence. Kos word deur die man gemaak. Simple. So how do they ask questions in IEB and CAPS? So these are the general trends that I've noticed with CAPS. They ask you in a very straightforward way. Skryf die onderstaande sinne oor in die leidende vorm. Onderstaande sin oor in die leidende vorm. They're giving it to you. They're saying, give this to us in leidende vorm. Simple. And then they give you the sentence and it's up to you to now apply those steps that I've given to you and change the sentence to leidende vorm. In IB, however, the general trend that I've noticed is that they give you a sentence, they don't indicate that they want it in leidende vorm, and it's up to you now, using the keyword that they give, they start the answer with, to understand that, oh, leidende vorm is being asked of me. So, for example, here, hy skop die bal. They would just give it to you there. Number 1, hy skop die bal. Then they'll start the answer with die bal. Now it's up to you to look at that and say, oh, okay, die bal. What part of stompie is this in relation to? Oh, it's object. So they're asking me for leidende vorm. It will help you then answer the rest of the question and finish the sentence. Same thing with verlede tyd. They might start the answer with a word of time. So they'll give you a sentence and then they will start with gister. And then you look at that word and you say, oh, okay, what kind of word is this? Oh, it's a word in relation to time. Maybe they're asking me a day question. Then you think, okay, gister is yesterday. That means it's verlede tyd. So those are the kind of things that they ask in IB taal. They don't always tell you to change it to a specific thing. They will give you a keyword and it's up to you to understand what that keyword is pointing you to, which taal concept it's pointing you to. So die bal, object, we're dealing then with leidende vorm. Make sense? Hopefully it does.